world. I'm a partner at Fort Canvas. Fort Canvas is also one of the leading design agencies here in Nigeria, handling rebrands for companies such as Piggyvest, Number, which used to be Kudi, and Parkway, Uverify, and a host of others. So this has put me in a position to be able to lead the redevelopment of the website for marketing website for some of these clients. I lead the team at WebBoss. WebBoss is right now is mostly a YouTube channel where we create technical and non-technical content, and I lead the engineering team at other pieces of tech where we are trying to tell the stories of other people who are in tech because there's this stereotype that everybody in tech writes code, right? And from my own experience of what I've seen so far is a huge percentage of people who actually work in tech companies are actually not the guys writing code. So that's why we are doing other pieces of tech. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it is at Aremu underscore Smog. And that's all there is to know about me for now. So when I want to talk about collaboration, right, I like to start with a little story. And the story is this is building products looks exciting and building products looks so exciting that to us as human beings it feels like this is the first time that human beings are trying to build stuff, right? But since creation, human beings have been building stuff, right? Think about looking for caves to stay overnight, the invention of fire, right, till modern day civilization, skyscrapers, roads, cars, and all of that. So throughout our evolution as human beings, whether the Darwinian evolution or if you think about like the kind of things that we interact with on a day to day, human beings have been building. But the introduction of computers, or should I say the digital space, makes it seem to us as human beings that, oh, this is the first time that human beings are trying to create stuff. And we tend to throw away some of the learnings, right? We tend to forget the origin of what building stuff really is all about, right? Because in the end, what you're trying to do is build stuff. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it on a computer or you're out in the sun, molding blocks, maybe due to SAPA or something, right? In the end, we are building stuff, right? And this for me really informs the way I think about digital products, right? So let's just use like a simple example here. Say you want to build a house, you go to a surveyor. Of course, you need to talk to an estate valuer or whatsoever to probably like help you get a land. Then after getting the land, you go to a surveyor. I studied surveying and geoinformatics in uni, right? So you go to a surveyor, someone like me who decides to follow that career path to help you survey the land. They come with a plan, then they take that plan, then you take that plan to an architect who then maps what the building is supposed to look like, right? After mapping what the building is supposed to look like, then you take that plan, you take it to a builder. Building is actually a profession in quotes, right? That's people actually go to school to study building. So you go to a builder, the builder takes that plan and then supervises laymen and that's like construct that house. Now, if you look at the way that has worked or the way that flow has worked, is when one professional is done, a professional is not done. A professional is not able to work until one person is done, right? And like I said, like human beings have been building, right? And before now, what we're building were houses, skyscrapers, and all of that, right? When the time came for us to be building digital products, this was literally like what the same approach that we took to building stuff. And in product management, it's called the waterfall method. So basically, what that means is that the product manager, or I'm sure there were even no roles as product managers back then, right? Or the CEO or a young chap in Silicon Valley just has an idea, right? Then he probably just talks to someone who is a designer. The person designs all the screens, then they transfer it over to the developer or the engineer, and the engineer begins to write code. And in the middle, he discovers that, oh, something is wrong and they probably need to change something throughout the entire system, and that's going to take a lot of time. So that approach is known as the waterfall method, where before one person is able to work, right, the where before one person is able to work, one person needs to finish their work. It's kind of layers on top of each other. But as we began to build digital products, we saw that that approach to building was not effective. And it was not effective in that, especially post Figma era, where you didn't really have things like variants. So what that meant is that if you had a button that was yellow, it means that all instances of the yellow button, if it was 1 million times, you needed to go look for a way to make those buttons go from yellow to red, right? So that's just like the little story that I wanted to kick off with, and we will learn more about how collaboration works down the line. But before we go deep into like the session itself, I would like us to do a little pop key quiz. It's just two questions, by the way. And the first question is, who owns the product? So you can drop a comment in the comment section, or you can mute your mic to like answer this. So your own opinion, who owns the product? Is it the product team, which consists of the product designers, UX writers, product managers, and so on and so forth, or the engineering team, which consists of front-end engineers, back-end engineers, the DevOps team, the data team, and so on. The marketing team, which includes social media managers, community managers, SEO writers, brand designers, and so on and so forth. The business development team, which is the CEO, board of directors, account managers, and so on and so forth. So who owns the product? Anybody wants to give it a shot? Who owns the product? Is it the product designer? Is it the product team? I don't want to say product designer because the product team is larger than the product designer. Sorry, nobody's responding. You don't know who owns the product. Anybody? Okay. So I'm seeing responses. Someone said the consumers. Someone said the product team. Any other shots? I'll start calling names. The CEO. Okay. Um, Benga, who owns the product? Michael, who owns the product? Okay. The product team. Interesting. Michael, who owns the product? So Michael says it's everyone, both the consumers, the stakeholders, the product team, everybody. Toluwani, do you want to give it a shot? Who owns the product? I didn't say Michael was wrong, by the way. So I didn't say it was wrong or right. So Toluwani, do you want to give it a shot? Who owns the product? Either so MM says it is everyone into brackets stakeholder. So everybody on this list owns the product. Interesting. Okay, it seems Toluwani is not able to answer. So yeah, fantastic responses, but in my own opinion, the customers or the consumers own the product. And I think Esther said that. And the reason I go with this answer is because they are the ones we are solving for, right? If there is no unique solution, that if there is no problem that we are solving, a product will not even exist. Like all of these people, the reason the CEO or whosoever is the founder is even able to come up with the idea is because some people are facing that problem, right? The reason the social media manager is thinking of, oh, what should we post today? Should we do a poll and all of that is because there are people out there that they want to engage, which are the customers. So in my own opinion, right, I feel like the people, the person or the people who own the product are actually the customers. And this is like the premise for why we should even collaborate, right? I think I put out a tweet sometime that the energy that you will spend in fighting your engineers or your marketing team, you guys could as well just spend it in collaborating. Of course, we'll see tips and ways that which by which we can collaborate with engineers, especially. So the next question is, which team? Oh, there's a typo here. Apologies, and I didn't say that. So, which team is the most important? The product team, the engineering team, the marketing team, or the business development team? Which team is the most important? Um, Sorry, I'm not doing giveaway. I would have said Esther. Will you get the answer again? But sorry, no giveaway. Except Learnergy wants to do giveaway. Onike, are we doing giveaway for correct answer? Okay, so Adenike says all the teams. Okay. Anybody else wants to give it a shot? You know, there might be giveaway for this particular question because there was no giveaway for that one. Doesn't mean there won't be giveaway for this one. Marketing. Benga says marketing. Um, Shayo says the product team. Okay. Esther, reigning champion. What happened? Answer question now. Which team is the most important? Esther says all teams. Okay. Um, Anybody else wants to give it a shot? Who has not responded? Toluwani has not answered any of the questions. I'm trying to see if I can see everybody. Okay, I'm not able to see everybody. Okay, so Again, in my own opinion, like Esther and Adenike said, every member of the team is actually important. And here is it, right? There is this particular guy that I get like hoodies and stuff from, right? It's not even like a product per se. It's just a brand that sells clothes, right? Amazing clothes and all of that, right? But every single time when it comes to delivery, I have an issue. Is that the delivery is late or they deliver the wrong thing and all of those things. In as much as they are producing high quality clothing, right? Just because the delivery is shitty, for me, it is bad experience. So even though you might look at social media manager, the only thing they are doing is just posting designs that the brand designers have created. The thing is, if they don't do well at that their job, right, you discover that it has an impact on the brand. So also, this is another reason. So right now, I feel like one of the things you take away from these two questions is that you begin to look away from yourself as a product designer that, oh, like this, I don't even own this product. I'm trying to solve a problem for the users or for the customers, right? So how can I ensure I collaborate with my team members, engineers in this case, to ensure that we deliver the best solution to our customers? And also, you don't see yourself like there's no God complex, right? Either as an engineer or as a product designer that, oh, I'm more important than this person. We are all working together in order to ensure what the users have the best experience. So let's talk about collaboration. So I'll be talking about collaborating or collaboration with these few points. The first one is you're not done until it is done. And the second one is read the room, what the actual frog is an MVP. Engineer, not dumping ground. Design systems, not design suggestion, and handing off with conscience. So the first one is you're not done until it is done. So here's my proposition, or because while preparing for this talk, I was thinking of a way to find a balance between, because I just didn't want to come here and tell you guys that, oh, it is very important for you to collaborate with your engineers, this one, that one, because it's just going to feel like, oh, this guy's an engineer. So obviously, he's going to come here and try to defend the engineers, right? But when you look at a product, right, um, I feel like for every product that goes out there, the way designers see them and the way engineers see them are quite different, right? Many a times, product designers, yeah, of course, tend to see product from the aesthetics and the functional point of view, which is, oh, are the buttons looking great? That is aesthetics, right? When you click on the button, what screen or what page is the user supposed to land on? That's function, right? So that's why they call it UI and UX, user interface and user experience, right? That's the way product designers have been trained to see things. But engineers have been trained to see things from a technical point of view, which is an engineer is not thinking about the fact that like by default, an engineer is thinking about the fact that, oh, there is a button, right? What are the technical restrictions around this button? Or let's say there's a drop down. What are the technical restrictions that comes with working with a drop down, right? And because engineers are seeing things from a technical point of view, you ship your design to them, right? And because they are saying you ship your design to them, then they implement something that is different from what you have designed and what do you call it? You have the design you've created for them and also the flow you've mapped for them, right? And I feel like the way to find a middle ground between this is hinged on mostly on communication, right? And there's this case study by the Facebook and the Meta engineering team, right, on how they built text animations for Instagram stories. So what I observed, like going through this article, what I observed is the fact that the arriving at the final solution was an iterative process, right? Which meant that the designers, in fact, from the article, the designers had three options that they shipped to the engineering team, right? Then the engineering team tried to implement all the three options. After trying to implement all the three options, they discovered that some of those options were more feasible than the other. And by the time they were done seeing the one that was feasible, then they had to communicate back to the design team to just make tweaks here and there after trying all they could. So this tells us a lesson, or this brings to attention the fact that great products don't just come from function and aesthetics, right? There, it also comes from technical consideration, right? And many a times, the engineers themselves don't have control over these things. Sorry, please give me a sec. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I'm back. So the engineers themselves don't have what do you call it? They don't have control over these things, right? So instead of when the engineer comes back to you and say, "Oh, this is not technically visible," right? Instead of trying to see the engineer as being lazy, try to get their point of view, and you guys should come together and find a middle ground, right? Because, like I said, like it is aesthetics plus function plus technical consideration that gives a great product. Now, there's animated, what do you call it? There's text animations on Instagram stories. Whatsoever back and forth went between the engineering and the design team, the customers do not know that, right? But because the two teams decided to work hand in hand, the engineering team communicating the restrictions that they have, and the design team also absorbing those feedbacks is how they were able to ship out like a great product. So on to the next one. Read the room. What the actual fuck is an MVP? So here's the thing. I could be wrong, but I think most designers don't think in terms of a minimum viable product. And in my own opinion, or yeah, in my own opinion, the way engineers are trained initially, like the way engineers are trained is that first get a solution, right? Then optimize. That's the way engineers are trained. In fact, when engineers are interviewing for technical roles, they tell them it's one of the technical tips out there for engineers. Don't try to get the most optimum solution on the on first trial, right? And this is basically the way engineers think. Now, when you are building an MVP, and I'm talking of an MVP, minimum viable product, which is, oh, you have an idea and you just want to test the market. Oh, is this thing going to work? Does it even make sense to ship this thing out and all of that, right? You want to focus on function over aesthetics. And here's what I mean. I'm not saying go and design a shitty app that will not look good, but I'm saying that you can leverage on, let's say, for example, existing design systems or templates instead of trying to build everything from scratch. Because one, it's going to take you a lot of time to design, right? And it's also going to take your engineers a lot of time to implement as well, right? So these are like some of the issues that I've seen when people are trying to ship out products. I remember that in as much as you want to flex your design muscle, right? We know you're a superstar, right? In as much as you want to flex your design muscle, right? You need to read the room, right? Um, how fast does this need to get in the hand of the customers? The time that we are spending designing, what do you call it? A a design system from scratch. With design systems are actually very difficult to maintain, by the way, even though they look exciting. When you see companies like Facebook, Airbnb say, oh, they have a design system, you look at it and you're like, wow, this is really amazing. Those things actually take time. So instead of investing time into what do you call it, into trying to build all of that from scratch, you want to focus on just the function. Someone should be able to click a button, right? Of course, it will be on brand. I'm not saying go and use a blue color for a brand that is maybe like yellow is their primary color, right? But you really want to leverage on things like, let's say, the bootstrap. So, for example, there are a bunch of UI kits in the Figma community. This is an example of like the bootstrap UI kit. And the interesting thing for some of these UI kits is that there is also a design system or a package that your engineers can use as well. So it allows you to move seamlessly. Believe me, you is if you are designing a UI kit from scratch, you're not just designing the UI kit, you're also doing documentation. After documentation, you then need to onboard your engineers into the design system for them to understand. Then they start building everything from scratch. But if you're using something like Bootstrap UI kit, right, then your engineers already have an equivalent, they already have a documentation where they can go into. So it saves you stress of trying to onboard them into the design system. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense. So if you're trying to build a product that needs to launch as fast as possible, definitely there's nothing wrong in you leveraging UI kits that are out there just to ensure that the product moves on fast. Like I said, when you're starting out, especially for things like MVPs, you want to focus on function over aesthetics, then you can optimize the solution down the line. Of course, UI kits will always have restrictions, but then I believe that technology every day is us waking up and picking the poison that we would drink. So yeah, sorry. this was a plug. I thought this session was going to hold um before this, right? Actually, we actually have a session called Giving and Receiving Feedback Effectively. You may want to check that out on Webboss YouTube channel. It is with Fokwe Daniels, who leads People and Culture at Old School Africa, and Oye Johnson, who is developer advocate at Quidat. And the reason I plug this in is I feel like one of the things sometimes engineers and designers don't know how to give feedback. Like your engineer has designed something, right? Has implemented something, and to you, you are fresh out of design school now. You want to drag. You've been seeing that drag going on Twitter, and you're like, it's time to put mouth to. Sure, you get. Sometimes a lot of things can be managed in communication, and I feel like this session can be really helpful if you decide to go through it. Okay, yeah. Very important thing that I think designers should bear in mind as well is that it is engineering and it's not a dumping ground. And this comes with carrying your engineering team along with what you are doing, right? Of course, there are restrictions to this, especially in certain organizations, which we'll still talk about. But as much as possible, you want to ensure that you are carrying your engineering team along. And this reason I think is quite obvious. Like I said earlier, right, is there is what they call it? There is there is technical constraints sometimes, right? And when building a product or project management 101, every project is hinged on three things. It's called the project management triangle, right? You have the time, you have the budget, and you have the resources, right? Now, if you're trying to build, let's say, the next Facebook, right? And in that instance, you are trying to show superpower, all of your design superpowers, it may not really work, right? If you have, for example, you have 8 weeks to build a product, you want to liaise with your engineer and say, oh, if we are going to build it and ship a product out in 8 weeks, what are the things we need to put in place, right? Your engineer can advise, oh, I've mentioned this earlier. Oh, let's use so UI kit because it is faster to move with. Now, of course, you may think that you as a designer, that may not necessarily work in your favor. But I feel like at times, maybe not necessarily as designers, right? There are times that we need to go out of our comfort zone. Like I said earlier, remember that the people who owns the product are the customers. So sometimes we all need to get out of our comfort zone for what do you call it? For the customers to have like the best experience. And it could as well be you telling the engineers to get out of their comfort zone to say probably. So for example, someone like me, I prefer building stuff from scratch. I've used Bootstrap, I've used a lot of these guys in the past, but I just enjoy building stuff from scratch. So if you are trying to ship a product in 8 weeks, I'm probably not the best guy to be talking to because if you want to use a UI kit, that kind of thing, like I'm not a big fan of that, right? But if there's proper communication, it is now left for the engineer to get out of their comfort zone and say, oh, probably go take a day or two off to like learn that UI kit and that to be able to like in order to be able to like implement and so that the product can move faster, right? And also one thing you want to avoid is designing 1,000 screens and not dumping it on your engineers to go and implement. It's never going to work, right? A general rule of the thumb is if you are building, let's say, a product, for example, right, it's usually a good thing to start from, if in situations where it is possible, right, it's usually a good thing to start from design systems or components, right? If you start with a design system or component and you share that with your engineering team, right? Your engineers are even able to advise on some things. So, for example, I'll give an example. There was this project we were working on, and we're building everything from scratch. And the designers have done like a fantastic job in the components and the UI system and all of those things, right? But I noticed the major flaw, which is that they have H1s, and the H1 values are they only gave H1 values for desktop. They didn't give H1 values for what do you call it, for mobile and tablet screen. So because I had access to the what do you call it, to the component library or design system early enough, I was able to tell the designer that, oh, this H1 needs sizes on desktop and mobile, and their attention was drawn to that, right? So you don't just do all your design system, then you're done with your design system, then you start using the design system in the product, then your engineers now start seeing gaps, and then you now discover that it's going to you now discover that you now need to like do like massive revamp. As much as possible, try to take product in chunk. Like I said, we are not in the days of manual building where before one person can work, the other person needs to work. Try as much as possible to communicate and try to what do you call it? To collaborate with your engineers. Don't see engineers as a dumping ground, but you should see them as people that are working together now to build great products. So design system, not design suggestion. I don't know if everybody's a Christian here, but this why praying this slide, this Bible quote just came to my head, and it says, "Do to others whatever you would like them to do to you." This is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. So essentially, the lesson to pick from this is one thing I've observed that I've seen a lot is designers don't stick to their design systems, and it's very bad. Like, in fact, I tell people that if you share a Figma file of a project with me, I look at the design system, I look at the product that you've used the design system on. If I see a lot of discrepancy between the design system and the product, no matter how good the product is in terms of like aesthetics and function and all of those things, I lose some respect for you, right? Because it generally shows a lack of discipline, right? Where you are not able to create something and stick to it. Now, think about it, which is where this Bible verse comes into play, right? I'm beginning to sound like a pastor, apologies, right? Is if you cannot stick to your own design system, how do you expect the engineer to stick to the design system? So, for example, you have, let's say, a button or a button component of, let's say, three variants, which is small, medium, and large. And let's say for the large button, the text of the button is, let's say, 16 pixels. Then I go on the product itself. Let's say I go on the about page, right, or the sign-in page, and I see a button which in size, right, looks like the large button. But I click on the property of that particular button, I'm saying 17.46 pixels. Anytime I see that thing, like my body just aches me, right? Because so then I begin to wonder, should I make this particular button on the sign up page, should I make it different, or should I, or does the designer want to create a new variant? Like, for me as an engineer, it just throws me off balance. I don't know what to do, right? But one thing that I have found myself doing a lot of times is just communicating with the designers that, oh, what exactly were you trying to do here? Were you trying to create a variant, or were you or was it intentional? Now, a lot of times, designers that I have worked with have been humble enough to admit that, oh, it was an oversight. Then they go in there and fix it, right? However, as a designer, because not all engineers, should I say, have a sense of ownership, right? Not all engineers would be like mid-level, or not all engineers that you work with would be like mid-level or maybe like senior level, that kind of thing, right? So you really want to pay attention to how you are using your variants or your components throughout your product, right? And like I said, in situations where it is intentional, where you actually needed a button that has that size, right, and now needs a font size of 18 pixels, make a variant of it. One thing I've found over time is that if you need to use something in one place, you most likely will need to use it in more than one place. So it is safer to make it a variant in order to what? To make both your design and your code in synchronization. And design system is not just a fancy thing to do, right? In front-end engineers call it a component library. It's not just a nice to have. In fact, it is something that is very important that you need to pay attention to, because when you designers join the team, you're not just doing this for engineers, right? You're also doing it for designers that will take over the file or whatsoever from you, right? When they come into your design system, they see that, oh, the product and the design system is in synchronization. If there's something in your design system, if there's something in your product that is not in your design system, it shows a problem. And in coding or engineering, they call it technical debt. And sometimes I rant on Twitter that even designers accumulate technical debt. These kind of things can lead to technical debt, because the what do you call it, or design debt, right? Which means that whosoever designer that is taking over from you then need to figure out a way to synchronize the product with the design, right? So it's something that you should need to pay attention to. See, believe me, if you can't stick to your own design system, you can't expect your engineer to stick to the design system. It's very, very difficult. Yeah, and you just make life easy for yourself and for your engineering team if you stick to your design system. So, handing off with conscience. I need to add that it's not just hand off, like hand off with conscience. So, and the first point here is don't eat into development time. Engineers ate it, and I think I'm top of the list of the people who ate it the most. And this eating into development time many a times is just he says this man is angry. Apologies, I'm not here to rant about engineering. Yeah, but like this is just like a very important topic because sometimes you are trying to talk to your engineers and you just don't understand like why is this person behaving this way? Why are they ignoring me? That kind of thing. It's because for a 8-week project, right? You as a designer promised the team that design was going to be ready in 4 weeks. And what I've observed the designers do over time is it is that like that 4 weeks, the design will be ready, right? But the design will not be ready for handoff. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So there's a difference between design is ready and the design is ready for handoff. So when you are giving time, don't just give time for when design is ready. Give time for design is ready and for when the design is ready for handoff as well. Because for a 4-week project, if after 4 weeks is the 5th week when development is supposed to start, is when you're not handing off to the engineers. It means that you've eaten into the development time, and the engineers will not have it likely because in the end it falls on them, right? Especially like what do you call it, working in agencies. This is something that I've observed over time, right? Especially for agencies where you have like a lot of things that you're doing for clients, you're doing brand identity for them, you're doing a lot of marketing stuff for them, then you're now doing marketing websites for them. To them, the marketing website is just one thing, right? But then that marketing website, before it goes out, still needs to go through the product designer. So to them, it's just like, we spent 3 months or 4 months working on this project. After month 5, we should have everything rolling out immediately. It doesn't work that way. So, and the engineers will just be doing a lot of pushback and even things that they could do. Now, I'm telling you developer secrets. Now, even things that they could do, they will tell you they can't do it. Why? Because you've eaten into their time unnecessarily, and they will want to meet up with the time in order to like to get the product in the hands of the customers. So one other thing that you want to do during your handoff is don't describe with words or mouth. So if there's an animation, please prototype that animation. Don't just say, so when the user now scroll up, then this thing will now move to the left. Tools like Figma are getting more powerful, right? Such that you're able to make things come alive. Don't describe with words because, like I say, walk or talk is cheap. And even in even more important situations, you want to try and prototype like the entire flow. Like it makes engineers happy. You just cover that the engineer will jump on the Figma file and he said I should think it out. So you see that the engineer will jump on the Figma file and they just be tearing things left, right, middle, and center. That's because they are able to see clarity in what you are doing. And the truth is, and for me as an engineer, right, a rule of the thumb to me is that if you as a designer, you can't make what you want to achieve come alive. It's more like I see it as being hypocritic. It's more like setting standards that which you can't meet for yourself as well. So please don't describe with words or mouth. If you are going to describe it with words or mouth, just forget about it. It means that it's not important. It's not priority. If it was priority, you would actually like invest the time to actually like make it come alive. Apologies, I'm not ranting, but this is just like the reality of life. So another thing you want to do is you want to export assets or make it easy to do so. And for this, I feel like I can't really, like I said, let me follow my own advice of not describing with mouth. So I have like some sample Figma files here to like kind of explain that. So now, like I said, a product is a combination of a lot of things, right? And we have the technical, we have the aesthetics, right? You will even see that coming alive here, right? So this is a fictional landing page for what do you call it, Bloody Samaritan concert happening in December 2022 across these various cities. Now, this image of Arya Star, as obviously it is larger than the laptop screen, right? And
Of course, Figma now you're able to move it around and just like what do you call it? What do you call it? Yeah, you're able to move it around. Sorry, I'm not the best person when it comes to like Figma and stuff, right? Now, depending on the technology stack that the website is built on top of, right? You the way you will interact with these assets for different stacks is different. So, and I'm going to give an example. Let's say, for example, the page where you want to use this asset to achieve this design is, let's say, a dynamic website. And what I mean by a dynamic website is a website like a website where you upload this image to, let's say, a server, and that image is now dynamically rendered on the website. Now, if you sorry, I think I need my second one here. But yeah. So if you I think I can put my mic down. So if you take this image like this, right, and export it to your engineer, for a website that is dynamically rendered, they won't be able to work with it. For a website that is dynamically rendered, something that will work accurately more for them is something like this, where it is actually the frame of this website of the image. So here's what I mean. Say, for example, something like this. I'm looking for the rectangle tool. Yep. Looking for the rectangle tool. Then I'm going to use as mask, right? Then, chat. So the masked image now, you can see that there's a difference between these two images. For some tech stack, this guy will work perfectly. Let's say this is just like a static page that they are building manually from scratch. If they are using a dynamic, let's say they are using like a content management system or something to render what do you call it, preview images, then they cannot what do you call it, you need this image in this size. So which is the point of communication, right? So is either you export the asset, right, or you make it easy for the developer to be able to export the asset, which means that if, for example, the tech stack you're using with the company is like a content management system, you know that because it's a content management system, you have to crop this image so that by the time the engineer wants to come in to export the image, they are not exporting this full image. Because if they export this full image, it means that in the design, this is what you are going to have. By the time they execute, by the time they implement, this is what you are going to have. And you as the developer, as the designer, you want to say, no, now we want to cut off some of Arya Star's head, we want to cut off some of her hand. That was intentional. Sure you get. So you want to pay attention to that. And this comes from communicating with your engineers or engineering team. So basically there's a lot of dynamics that comes with building. There's no one straight way to like build applications or products. So you have to continuously like communicate with your engineers before like you even make decisions. And when they come to you, you must be open to also like listen to them. Some of them want to give you code zobo, but we'll get to how you can navigate all of that. So yeah. So the next thing is make it easy to copy block of text. And this particular one is so dear to my heart because this is a mistake that I've seen a lot of designers making, especially when it comes to things like privacy policy pages. So for the most part, I mean most times, designers don't give developers edit access, which I'm not even ready to protest against because you believe that we'll come in and spoil your design. That's fine. But if you believe that we are going to come in and spoil your design, please make it easy for us to be able to like take out the text that we need. And here's what I'm saying, right? So if you come over here now, for example, I have like a sample privacy policy page. These two policy pages, they look very similar, but they are different. And the difference is this. If I click on this guy, this is just like a block of text. And I've seen a lot of designers make this mistake, even experienced designers. And I can't blame them. The reason is because the legal team who is going to work on the privacy policy page will most likely just send them what do you call it? we most likely just send them like a Google Doc or something, right? So they from that Google Doc will just copy, create one text box inside of Figma, paste, then make the headings bigger and move on with life. Now, you know the problem with that is that when your engineer wants to, because it is in various sections, right? Many a times the way the code base is set up is in components, right? So the way your developer is going to set up the components is that there is an heading, then that heading accepts some text below it, right? So if you do this, it means that anytime they need to copy a section of the text, they need to, where is inspect? Yeah, they need to, if they copy all of this text and they come here, sorry, I just want to show you an example, and they paste, you already have all of the text, then they now need to now start looking for a way to like cut it and all of those things. That can get very frustrating. I've done this a couple of times. I find it very, very frustrating. I hate working on privacy policy pages. So what you can do is break the text. Show you get, this is heading, introduction. It means I can come in here, copy it, paste inside the code base. The body of the introduction, copy it, paste inside of the code base. So these are things, or these are tips that you can take away. So don't put all your text inside one block of text, right? And I think for privacy policy pages, the reason designers don't like, sometimes it's even out of pure ignorance, right? They are not doing this intentionally. It's because when you're building a product, like automatically you most likely be working with text that are not even like paragraphs, right? It's just, oh, welcome. We are the best cryptocurrency exchange in Nigeria, blah, 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 and it's gone like that. They don't, product designers tend not to work with like huge chunk of text, like for the most part. But if you are working on text, I think I'm going over this again because it's very dear to me. And I've seen this over and over again. If you are going to work with what do you call it, a huge chunk of text, please break those texts down into like various sections so that it is easier for your designer to copy and paste into the code base. So apologies. So yeah, another thing you want to pay attention to during your handing off processes, you want to name your component and variants properly. And there is a popular joke in development. They say the two hardest things in computer science is, well, we're all tech bros, so you see computer science last. The two hardest things in computer science is naming variables and K-chain validation. I won't talk about K-chain validation because it's not relevant in this conversation. So naming things are actually very hard. That's why if you go into like biology or chemistry, they talk about things like nomenclature, which are like set of rules that you follow in order to like name chemical components or name animals or and stuff like that, right? So you need to accept that naming components and variants in your design system in itself is work. So you don't just see your design system as just buttons, this one, that one, and you move on with life. Like you don't calculate mentally that this is a 5 minutes, 10 minutes task. Like it's something that is going to take time and needs a lot of attention, right? And this is very important when you want to make your components reusable. Now, there are popular components, right? Things like button, things like text. You know that, oh, every text, you have H1, H2, H3, then you have P something, something. That one, you move on with life, right? But if you go to a website, let me see if I can visit a website. Let me see. Let's do Parkway. Let's do parkway.ng. Okay, yeah. So this website, for example, now I actually worked on this website, right? I don't even know if there's an NDA, but then they won't arrest me. So yeah, so I worked on Parkway's website. This is the landing page of Parkway's website, right? If you come over to another page, let's say settlements, right? This heading here is just one component, right? But it has variants. So there's a variant that has a moving background. There's a variant that has just a static background, it's not moving, and just has like a dark background. Then if you look at some other pages, so for example, we are on wallet page right now, you see that there is there's an image to the left here, then you have some lists here, an image to the right, then there is some lists here on the left. And if you come to agency banking, you see that it is practically the same thing. Now, this is a component. It needs to have a name, because if it doesn't have a name, how then do you reuse it across board, right? Especially within the code base, right? So these kind of things, I can't remember what we called these components and all of that, right? But it was something that the engineering and the design team had to work hand in hand to do. So because engineers on a day-to-day, they are tasked with creating variables, things like variables, which involve naming things, right? You may want to collaborate with your engineering team. Oh, this particular section I want to use on multiple pages. What do you think we can call it? There is nothing bad in it. Or you can develop with the engineering team a kind of system around naming stuff, because it also, so the reason why this is important is because it allows synchronization between the code base and the design. So it helps a new engineer who joins the team by merely going into the code base. They see, oh, the way you are naming sections is by saying something like maybe SLO1, SLO2, SLO3, and all of those things, right? So by if they need to create new components that or new sections that other people will use, right? It knows, they know that there's already like a kind of format that is being followed in order to create in order to follow that, right? Another thing that you want to do to sharpen like your components and variant naming skills is you want to check out public UI kits. How are they naming stuff? What approach are they taking to it, right? Because that helps you to solidify your knowledge and what do you call it, to solidify your knowledge in naming components and variables. In programming or in writing code, there are articles, there are books written on naming variables, naming functions, and all of those things. That's because it's such a big deal. And the world in which we are going right now is so component driven that I think that's something that designers are not paying attention to yet, right? So there are standardized names, things like carousels or sliders and all those things, right? But within a system or within companies, you need to come up with systems in order to like standardize other components that are unique to the company that no other person out there will most likely use or interact with. So, what else do I have on my list? I think that's pretty much what I have on my list. And to a very important question here, which is, should designers learn how to code? Right. So I put this tweet out in 2019. Like I said, I used to be a designer, right? And I guess I was still so much caught on design bug, right? And the tweet basically says that designers shouldn't learn how to code, developers should learn how to design. I'm sure you designers will like me now. So follow me on Twitter and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm defending you guys. Anyways, because even the world wasn't programmed, it was designed. However, my current thoughts on that take is that it depends. And it depends on the level that you are in. And this is just like the absolute truth, right? As a junior designer, you are more on the reactive state of things. And what does reactive mean? What does being reactive means? It means that you are working with you are most likely like working with like a team of like maybe senior designers or top level, top level designers, right? Who are more focused on taking the requirements from the top. They are the ones who have the conversations with the engineering team. Then they just assign tasks to everybody. So as a junior designer, you may not really care about the things that go on the technical side of things. You can actually focus on function and aesthetics, and you'll be good, right? But if you what do you call it? As you climb up the ladder, you go from being reactive to being proactive. And when you become proactive, it means that when requirements come, you are not thinking about it from the design angle. You are thinking about it from the technical angle, right? So even though you are not on the day-to-day, you are not writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but basically just knowing, oh, what technologies entail. Just like the way I've tried to like find the middle ground between like, oh, designing and writing code. Those things are actually like very, very important. And remember that in the end, it's all about building product, right? And for me, right, I feel like anybody who works in the product space should not limit themselves to, oh, I'm a designer or I'm an engineer. You need to open yourself up to the possibilities, because many a times, like I think I've been involved in product conversations that are not core engineering conversations. And the reason I'm able to contribute to those conversations is just I just care about product, right? You need to care about product, right? And if you care about product, I think sometimes you just need to go out of the way to gain knowledge. I'm not saying you should write code, though. I beg. You do not necessarily need to write code. I don't design. I don't care about Figma. I don't care about the latest updates in Figma, all of that, right? But at least trying to get the perspective of the product designers is very important for me to be able to do my job well. Because there are times that, and this is being honest, right? There are times that even you as an engineer, you're thinking that something is not technically visible. But if you just take a step back and look at the way the design has been implemented, right, it just makes sense to you. So the same thing for you as a designer, right? Sometimes you're thinking about, oh, how is this thing supposed to work technically? Like You may not be at that point. You probably may not be at that point yet, right? But you get to a point where you begin to think of, oh, by the time it lands in the hand of the users, right? How is this thing actually supposed to work? What are the restrictions that comes with the operating system that the users are using? And I'm going to give you an example. Like an example is on Android, for example, there is there's fingerprint and face recognition, right? Uh, okay, I think that was before the recent update of what do you call it, the recent Android updates, right? You can okay, yeah, is for unlocking your phone, you can use fingerprint and what do you call it, and facial recognition. But in apps, right, you can't actually use facial recognition on Android, right? For iOS, you can use facial recognition. So it means that if you are designing a cross-platform application, right, and you don't have this information, it means that your choice of icon for people using biometrics to sign in might be something that does not work for one platform. So let's say, for example, your choice of icon is a thumbprint, right? Which means that all users are supposed to sign in with what do you call it, with their thumbprint. Whereas it's a cross-platform application, which means that on iOS they are expected to use facial recognition. It then throws the user off balance. So in the end, you are not the one that writes the code to implement how the icon is going to change across the multiple devices, but having that information, having that knowledge enables you to know that, oh, okay, what do you call it? Don't just provide icon for thumbprint alone, also provide icon for what do you call it? For facial recognition as well. And what do you call it? Uh a suggestion I wanted to make for learning is that maybe when engineers are having conversation, maybe you can try and listen. But the truth is, it can get overwhelming because they are not having that conversation in order to educate you. They are just having conversation because they are trying to look for a solution, right? But you can just eavesdrop, like when they are saying this one, or and you're able to catch on it. Ask questions, be curious about what you are building, right? And very important thing, very importantly on this as well is use the product you are building, right? I think it seems so obvious, but I think a lot of people don't do this enough. Like use the product you are building. By using the product you are building, you can discover this restriction. Say, for example, the example I gave, right? You want to sign in via biometrics, and you go on your iOS, you discover that, oh, this thing actually doesn't have thumbprint, or his thumbprint is not supported to sign into apps. It's facial recognition that is supported. Then you can, but at that point in time, you can begin to have conversations with your engineer. What exactly is happening? Then they can go deep into what do you call it, into whatever it is that the problem is. So should designers learn how to code? Honestly speaking, it depends on the level that you are in. As you grow up the ladder, you don't need to, okay, I think the conclusion should be designers shouldn't learn how to code, right? But designers should know at least the way technical things work because it's going to facilitate your growth as a career. I say your growth as a career. It's going to facilitate your career growth. Hopefully, that's the correct English to use. So, last but not the least, we've spoken about a lot of things here, right? And in as much as I don't know how interesting all of these ideas and strange as they may be, is there is the organization to consider as well, right? There are some organizations that won't allow you to adopt some of these approaches. So what then do you do? Do you keep quiet? My advice to you is speak up. Honestly speaking, speak up. Just because things have been done a certain way doesn't mean it is the right way to do things, right? If you get into an organization where they do 1 million Figma files, what do you call it? I think some companies call their designers machine, and they measure impact by the number of screens they're able to do per day. I'm not sure that's like the best approach, right? Speak up that this approach may not necessarily be the best way that to get the most effective result. And there's a quote that informs like most of the decisions that I make these days, and it's by Uncle Bob. Uh, it says that the best way to go fast is to go well, right? Many a times, things like collaboration may seem like they are standing in the way of being able. Onike, he said in our former company, they were called machines. Terrible experience. Sorry about that. Right. So yeah. So the organization, like, you don't just do like 1 million Figma files and dump it on your engineers and all those things. Like, those processes are not effective, even though to them they seem to be moving fast, right? But you see that you may not necessarily be, they may not necessarily be getting the best results. The other thing is be the change you want, right? Don't just speak, also act. So if it's an organization where everybody does 1 million Figma fast and they dump it, you do sign up page and call the engineers and say, I'm done with sign up page. Come and look at what we've done so far and advise on it, right? Those are steps that you can take. And it may work. It's not cast in stone, right? It may work in some organization when they begin to see the benefit of actually taking that approach, that being collaborative is much more important than everybody just working in silos and just like dumping things like, yeah, like they were doing in the dark ages, right? And if you take that action consistently and you see that, oh, these people are just not ready to change, one other thing you want to consider is your career. You should ask yourself the questions like, what kind of job do you actually see yourself doing? Do you see yourself doing mediocre work over the next, let's say, 5 years, or you want to do work with great impact, right? So if you should consider your career, if doing 1 million Figma files and dumping it to engineers is what you see yourself doing in the long term, you are welcome. Continue doing the 1 million Figma files and dump it on engineers. But if you see yourself really doing impactful work, because companies like, think about it, like a company like Google really amuses me how they have so many products and things manage to remain consistent across board. That is due to work. Like, that is quality work. That is time invested into ensuring that they get things right. So if you want to do that kind of work, maybe that kind of organization may not necessarily be the best place for you to be. And it may be time to like just take a bow and say thank you for having me. And on that note, I say thank you. I hope that this session has been educative on how to collaborate with engineers. If there are any questions, I will take them now. Yeah, thank you. Okay, there are 4 people. Oh, someone said there are 4 people on YouTube that joined this session live. Interesting. I don't know. Mad. I'm ending the broadcast now, though.